and today we're going to be talking about the manga All You Need Is Kill, which is a manga adaptation of a light novel by Hiroshi Sakurazaka, and has been illustrated by Takashi Obata, who has done some done some good stuff. You might have heard of that little manga called Death Note. So naturally the artwork is really good, and I'm sure we're going to be talking about that in a second. So just a spoiler alert for not only this show, but the film adaptation that it also inspired, Edge of Tomorrow, or Live, Die, Repeat, which I think it was renamed to, a film that Gary was also on the Story X Story episode 4, and we all thoroughly enjoyed. So I'm going to go into kind of like a recap of the story, but before I do that, just quick impressions from everyone on how you found the story.
Okay, I'm going to go first then.
That's open to everyone, sorry.
Say it all at once.
Yeah, it's all everyone.
Chaos.
Oh my God. So I was not... I thought I'd read this and be like, oh yeah, I've already watched the film the film that's inspired by it. There's not much more it can give me. I'm sure it'd be good, but I don't know how much more it will give me. And it's so good. Nigel actually lent it to me, and I was like, oh, it might take me a while to get through this. No, I finished it that day. Wow. So that's just my impression of it. I couldn't put it down.
Yeah, I get that. How about you, Lara?
I feel exactly the same. Where I was a bit apprehensive, and then I read it, and then I couldn't believe there were only 2 volumes. I could have read more. They could have made more money out of me if they really wanted to, because I felt like, yeah, it was great. Very easy, fun, good read.
Cool. Gary, have you got a similar take? I feel like where she's going.
No, for me, I was kind of reluctant also to check out the manga, because I thought maybe it would be, exactly the same as the movie, kind of beat for beat the same. But actually, I much preferred the manga, because although it was a more concise story, and it was kind of very short, even though it's 2 parts, I feel like it just felt more impactful. It had more of a lasting impression on me than Edge of Tomorrow did, even though Edge of Tomorrow was a good movie too. But yeah, this just kind of blew me away. The only gripe I had was with the abrupt ending, but besides that, it was a perfect manga for me, and I enjoyed every moment of it.
Yeah, I feel I have nothing much to add, because I just agree with everyone. So I think this is going to be a good sort of loving type of discussion happening. But I will say, and for people listening, this is going to be a recurring theme of me saying that I don't binge things, and it applies to shows. It also applies to books that I read. I read a certain amount, and then something in my brain just goes, do something different after a while. So the fact that I read this in I think 2 or 3 days, for me that's something, because it just means I was able to not be distracted and just focus on this thing. So when I first got it, I picked it up, and I'm not going to lie, I did notice the size of it, and I thought, this is going to take me a while to get through. But when I started reading it, I was just flicking through pages, and just every so often just stop to admire the artwork and just go through the story. So it was a really easy to read. And to Gary's point about the story and the differences between the book and the film, I appreciated both what it did, but yeah, the book does kind of go in a different direction, which I wasn't expecting, but really appreciated the way they did that and what it said about the story itself. So yeah, I was super impressed by this, and definitely looking forward to sort of getting into some of the topics, the deeper topics. But before I do that, I will go into a quick recap of the story, which is slightly different than Edge of Tomorrow, so pay attention. Just a quick recap of the story. Keiji Kira is a new recruit in the United Defense Force who are losing the fight against the mysterious mimics, aliens who have laid siege to the Earth, terraforming the planet for their own needs and leaving it inhabitable for humanity. Keiji appears to be killed on the battlefield after his first encounter with an unusual-looking mimic, but he then wakes up to find he has returned to the day before the battle. The process continues, and Keiji finds himself caught in a time loop as his death and resurrection repeat again and again. Keiji's skill as a soldier grows as he passes through each time loop and multiple attempts to escape the situation. He soon realizes that his fate is similar to Rita Vertasky, a famous and extremely skilled soldier in the UDF. Rita eventually confides in Keiji once she realizes he is going through the same time loop she once did. She tells him the mimics have the ability to send a signal to the past, allowing them to see the future and change their behavior in the present. Each group of mimics, there is a central nexus mimic that causes the day to loop, as well as several antenna mimics, all of which signal the loop to reset. Keiji becomes trapped in a loop as a result of contact with one such antenna mimic. To escape the loop, Keiji must first kill all the antenna and then the nexus mimics, but the mimics constantly adapt to Keiji's attacks. He and Rita manage to eliminate the nexus, only to have the loop reset, with Rita forgetting what had happened. After telling this to Rita, she acknowledges that they missed one antenna, which they do eventually eliminate. Rita then attacks Keiji out of nowhere, explaining her theory that their brains have become modified to the point where they themselves have become antennas for the mimics, meaning one of them has to die before killing the nexus, otherwise the loop will continue indefinitely. Reluctantly, the two battle. Keiji mortally wounds Rita and stays by her side as she dies. Before Rita dies, Keiji confesses his developing feelings for her as she tells him to win the war quickly and prevent anyone else from suffering their fate. Keiji kills the remaining mimics and destroys the Nexus. Weeks later, he is hailed as the new hero of the United Defense Forces while silently reflecting on the sacrifice needed for them to win the battle. He then paints his exoskeleton blue in honor of Rita's memory. The end. So, just reminder, I know, Gary, you've seen the film, and Lara, have you seen Edge of Tomorrow?
I haven't, but I've done my homework and I've watched several YouTube critiques and I'm guessing that's near enough the same, yeah.
Yeah, you get the gist. Okay,
yeah.
Because I think one of the things to start with is the differences in the manga and the film adaptations. And before I started reading, I actually was just expecting the same story. So it was a surprise when I saw like the differences, particularly with you had like the way you had small differences, like the way Keiji realizes he's in a loop, to like big differences in Rita and her backstory, that she has a backstory, and then the ending, of course. So were there any like differences that you guys noticed that stood out, or anything that you kind of appreciated in one version versus the other?
Yes. Obviously, Rita is two very different characters.
Yeah.
In the manga and the film. So I was just trying to remember how, I don't think they tell you how old she is, but she's younger than people think she is, because
she's under 18, isn't she?
How she joined. Yeah, so she's...
Yeah, I think she's 16 or under, somewhere around there.
But I'm not sure, because at the point that he meets her, it's been a while since she joined, but I don't know.
Good
but
point.
Either way,
because they go into her backstory, and in her backstory, she's too young to join
So then she uses
the United Defense
someone's-
Forces.
Yeah, so she's using fake credentials.
Yeah.
Sort of. But like she has a really interesting backstory, and also she's like smaller than everyone else. And it's not just because she just happens to be smaller. They do make a comment that she looks like she has like a much younger body, but it's because she is younger, and no one knows. But I think that gives her more depth in itself, because it's like, wow, she had to go through all of this time loop, and all of this having such a young mind and like body, like physical attributes meant, she naturally would have been a lot weaker and would have had like a bigger gap to have to develop those skills and that strength.
So in the movie, she's played by Emily Blunt, right?
Yeah.
And I love Emily Blunt. So
She plays it well.
yeah, but then how is that difference portrayed? Because is she, because that contrast of her being in the manga, she's so young, and they sort of like take it for granted, say she looks young, but actually she is. Is Emily Blunt meant to be playing a younger person as well?
No, she's just not that same character, really.
Yeah, she's
Right.
a different complete. So the manga actually gives Rita a backstory, or I should say Rita in quotes, a backstory, which she doesn't really get in the film. In the film,
really?
it's just given that she's just extremely talented, and she has this reputation in the army, and that's it basically. You don't know sort of her journey.
Yeah.
So I definitely appreciate the backstory to Rita, because you empathize with her more, and you feel her struggle and where she's come from, and then you see like what she's been through in relation to what Keiji has been through, and it gives more depth to the story.
Yeah, I think it makes her more human as well. Like I think it makes the point of her being called like the Full Metal Redacted.
Good save there.
And then like, but just actually being really human underneath, and actually quite a nice person. I think that's not highlighted so much in the film, but definitely in the manga, it's like she's actually just a normal person and pretty chill.
And chill as you can be.
Gary, you're gonna say something.
Yeah, so like, well, first of all, I agree, with what she just said, because I like seeing that contrast in her character. Like you get to see her origin of, what happened to her and her family. And, you get to see the very vulnerable part of her. And then obviously when Kaiji first sees her, she's this sort of very strong character. So seeing, both contrasts was very good. And also, the fact that we got her backstory and that we kind of got into her mind a little bit, it made what happened at the end a lot more impactful. It definitely pulled on the feelings a bit more, just because we got that deeper dive into her character. So that was definitely necessary.
We see her like as a kid. She's basically a kid, sort of lose her parents to the mimics and then take it upon herself to just destroy mimics, which is why she wants to join the United Defense Forces. So you feel that with her, and then at the end when she kind of has to. She didn't sacrifice herself, but put herself in that position. You do feel that a lot more. I also liked how. So one of the differences that they made for the film is there was a lot of simplification, and as I get that in a film you can't necessarily always go into much detail. So, for example, how Keiji, or in the film William Cage, gets his. Is it William Cage? Or did I just make that up?
It's Cage something. I'm not sure.
We'll just go with just Cage.
Just Cage. How Tom Cruise. How
Tom Cruise,
how he gets the power. So he gets it from contact with mimic blood when he kills his first mimic, and the sort of blood comes over him and disintegrates him, and that's when it starts with him. So we start off the film with Cage outside of the loop, whereas we start the manga with Keiji inside the loop, and then he has to figure it out. And then I think another simplification was just the nature of the mimic power. So the manga goes into, I guess it gives a bit more of a sort of description to it. So the power comes from the antenna mimics, and I think they mentioned like tachyon particles. So it's a bit more of a complex process, whereas the film, it was just a case of you've got their blood. But I guess what that allowed the film to do and it's different formats, so you have to treat it differently. It set up a kind of high stakes. So once the film tells you that it's the blood that's given him the power, and then later on they take that away from him, it kind of lets you know, okay, this is what's at stake. So there's a point in the film where he loses the power, and you know that he can't just reset. So it raises the stakes in that sense. So I can understand why they made that change for the film.
Yeah, that makes sense, because I was just thinking, if you could get the power by blood spatter, then it's war, right? So shouldn't it just be everyone can do it, because everyone's going to be covered in the blood sooner or later? So I was thinking that was a bit of a weak thing, but actually what you've said makes sense.
Yeah,
it does. Yeah, you can take it away. Yeah, that makes sense.
I think
in this case it goes in him. It's not just on him. It disintegrates him.
Yeah. Okay. And it still is like a specific mimic, isn't it? It's not like just any mimic. It's still like a
specific one.
Yeah, good point. Yeah. So they have the Omega mimic.
Yeah, I think as well, like as far as like adaptations go, I think they've done really well in it being translated into the film from the manga, and like what they've changed is like not like, oh my god, you've destroyed the concept of this story, and there's, you know, the stakes are different stakes but still high stakes. And so you get the same sort of emotional ride, just driven by different things.
Like different mechanics and slightly different motivations.
And
I
think sorry I was just gonna say, I think it depends on what you attach to. Like some people might not feel will feel more or less for one over the other, just because of like everyone's personal attachment to like what an emotional stake is for them. But it's still like a similar journey.
Lara, you were going to say something.
Yeah, I was going to take it down a slightly different route, and how this idea of the age difference. And I think I've talked before about things like neogenesis, things that read better with children, essentially, as cannon fodder. And there are quite a few of these in manga where you have relatively young kids, even 18, 19, that sort of age, going into war, and it just doesn't read into like a Western audience all the time. So there are like neogenesis is the classic one where they say it couldn't be made as it is because you can't have 14-year-olds moving a huge mecha, potentially dying, and all of that psychological stuff. And I think
and there are certain scenes in that manga that you couldn't have kids do. So
exactly. So I kind of understand why they amped up the ages. And Tom Cruise, I'm quite interested how Tom Cruise got into this. Like what made him choose to do it?
Didn't he have a personal interest in it or something?
I hope so. That would be cool, wouldn't it? And Emily Blunt.
I think as well though, like realistically, if the world was being attacked by aliens, this seriously, like anyone who can physically manage would be fighting.
Yeah, would be signed up. Yeah,
true. Everyone's all lives hands on deck situation.
Like, the world is going to not exist. So like age kind of stops mattering at the point when, you know, the stakes are this high. Like what are you going to do? if you're not fighting, you're just gonna die. Like,
Exactly.
there's no if or about it. But I think the so KG is also quite young as well. Like, it's his first battle.
Yeah.
He's literally a fresh recruit, like literal noob. He's you know, like, so he's really young as well, and he's new to this, so he goes through a lot of like emotional and psychological struggles with, you know, war, as you would.
And even just the fact of the whole idea of repeating the day and what that means for him. So in both cases, you kind of see them use it as an example to get better. And that's when they're like, yeah, I'm going to take this opportunity. I'm going to develop. I'm going to grow. And he learns. So in the manga, he learns from... actually, it's slightly different because in the film, there's the sequence where Rita trains Cage. But in the manga, I've forgotten the character's name, but there's a general
sergeant,
sergeant, who trains him, and then he eventually finds his way. You know, he's you know, shooting mimics left, right, and center, but then realizes, you know, there's not enough bullets. So then he finds Rita's mechanic to make him the axe, a weapon that won't run out of ammunition, and so he kind of gets his training from a slightly different angle, and
he figures it out by himself as well. Like, in the film, Rita's telling him everything that he should be doing. In the manga, he's watching and learning.
Yeah, so the film does take that step to sort of explain things, outline things in certain ways. Whereas the manga, you're really following the characters kind of in a dialogue in terms of what's happening and what he can do about it.
His personal growth.
Yeah. I guess that's where, like, in the film in particular, you kind of see whether you get that video game element of, I'm going to repeat this stage again until I get better.
There's one... Oh, sorry.
Oh no, I was going to add a slightly different take on something else in the book.
Okay, so just commenting on the loop thing. There's one detail in the manga that I just love. Actually, I'm just going to mention two. There's two details of the manga that I just love that aren't in the film. One of them is the writing of the numbers on the hands of what loop they're in, because, like...
That's not in the film?
No.
Okay.
Because I think that gives you a much better sense of how many loops, because we noticed a bit in the film where it takes you a while to realise that, oh, wait, he's gone through a load of loops that we've missed, and you can only tell because he's, like, fighting really well and he knows where the enemies are going to be. But I like the hand thing. And then the other thing is the line that she says before someone dies on the battlefield, which is ultimately how KG approaches her.
Like the small talk.
The small talk, yeah.
Yeah, that's actually what I was going to mention.
Okay, yeah, cool.
Yeah.
There we go. Go for it.
But then that in particular, but then also the wider thing, because I noticed the theme about, or at least the way I took it as appreciating those small things, because even in Rita's backstory, it starts with her, again, I'm forgetting people's titles, general or sergeant or someone, sort of highlighting the small things, and then you have Rita's line that Tazziii mentioned, but then you also have this scene when KG spends the night at Rita's, or Rita spends the night at KG's, whichever, and they wake up talking about coffee. And even in the artwork of the book, the manga, you get that kind of, it focuses in on the coffee and talking about like, have you tried coffee, and it's just like that detail, that focus on the small things in life in the wide scope of this story about repeating the same day over and over. I kind of took that to kind of some appreciation of the small things in life.
There's those moments in the canteen as well, isn't there? So
and they're eating the plums.
Yeah, and and there's like, because before that he's sort of got through a phase where he's like bored because he's been eating the same thing for however many like loops, and someone like comments on it, and then he ends up in a fight, and then they go to sit in opposite each other, and then there's the whole thing with the way she's eating the plum, and that kind of highlights that the small things, and the things that really sort of matter in every day-to-day life that we might take for granted.
Yeah.
Can't take coffee for granted, guys. Every single cup, take it, smell it, like taste it, put your tongue in it, just like savor it.
Because you never know when you will beat the day.
Repeat the day.
Yeah.
I won't be because I can't drink coffee, but
Okay. I'll have yours.
But
yeah, you have mine.
Gary, did you notice anything?
Yeah, so I definitely agree with, the small sentimental moments. They meant a lot, and they kind of it left a lot. It showed a lot without explicitly saying it. Basically, like how they felt towards each other, kind of thing, and how they respected each other mutually. But I will say that in the movie, like one thing I'll give the movie a point on is the fact that it went deeper into the connection between Cage and Rita. Like we saw their kind of relationship develop a bit more than in the manga. And I would have liked to have seen, more kind of bonding between the two in the manga. That would have been cool to see before the final battle that they have.
Yeah, that would have added even more emotional weight to that ending as well. But what did everyone think about the ending? Or I guess the ending of the manga versus the ending to the film.
I preferred the ending of the manga, but also the film opens up to like another film. So
which there will be.
The sequel is called Live, Repeat, Repeat, or no, Live, Die, Repeat, Repeat.
Something like that.
Yeah. So I appreciate the ending of the film for the fact that it's not really the ending. And then the manga is a standalone story. I feel like it was way more heartbreaking.
Yeah, it's a very complex ending.
Is there a sequel to the manga? No.
No.
And he hasn't written, like, even the short novel, there isn't a second one, right? So they're just making a second movie out of nothing.
Yeah.
That's a good point. I didn't fully consider that. Yeah.
I'm going to look at it now.
Yeah, look at it now and clarify that. I was going to say as well, I would fully appreciate an anime adaptation of this with lots of overs to fill in all the in-betweens. That'd be great.
I think there were definitely a couple of, maybe I'm just thick, but there were definitely a couple of questions that I wouldn't mind knowing. One is that I thought, so he can't control when it's every time he dies, he loops back. But she can control it because she loops back in the shower.
No, she couldn't even.
They have to like so there's the point that they have to get past that like section of time they're looping through, right? By killing the specific mimics or whatever. And then there's the other thing of the headaches.
Yeah.
So the headaches get to a point where they're like crazy strong. And then I think there's a point where Keiji just collapses or something, right? The headache just gets really strong.
And that's because their brains are being changed by the process in the manga.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I don't believe she doesn't have like control over it.
So, okay, maybe I missed that part, but so I did think it was funny that he wakes up in bed and then she wakes up in the shower. And then there's mention somewhere about it being a 30-hour time loop. So they can loop within 30 hours. Something towards the very end.
That.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So I guess it's just general little confusion things that if they went into a little bit more kind of detail, maybe then I'd understand it a bit more.
Yeah.
So
that was like once they go past 30 hours, they can't loop back to that.
So it's within that 30-hour time frame.
But then they would die
Yeah.
within that 30 hours.
But then if he was always back in bed every time, so I'm guessing
Yeah.
he didn't do the 30 hours, but he just looped back into bed. But if he had the connection, maybe I'm reading too much into it as well, right? But if he had the connection with the antenna mimic when he killed it for the first time, why did he loop back to bed? Riddle me that. And why is she into the shower? Is it just
wait, does it
draw her
loop?
nude?
I don't
so
remember the
clear
shower
up one
thing.
thing for me quickly, because
Yeah.
I can't remember, but is Rita still in her loop when they both fight the server, or when they're both trying to find the server?
No, I think she's...
Or is she out of her loop?
broken out.
Okay.
I think she's broken out, but then so she understands what KG's going through. But in
Right.
because they do mention that like both of them have become antennas, which is why one of them has to die.
Okay, so
I think
she's still an antenna, but she's not looping, right?
Yeah, that's what I think.
Okay.
Yeah,
Oh.
but to the point about
yeah,
the bed versus shower,
okay.
that I'm not sure about, other than
Just want to draw her nude.
yeah,
I think
that's
it depends on-
manga thing.
I think it depends on the I'd need to go back and check it, like what that shower scene is, because if it's his loop, then it's just from when he wakes up.
I'm flicking through it
Okay.
now because
So
she first realizes, and she's in the shower, that she's looped back, but she kills the mimic. And that's how she unifies with it, right? That's how her brain is changed, because she kills the antenna mimic.
No,
then she's-
because of the contact with the tachyon, is it
Yeah.
particles or whatever that was? That's the thing that triggers that for her, and it starts the process of her both of them becoming essentially antennas.
I found the page where she's in the shower, and it
thank you.
says 30 hours before I went into battle, ? So she just happened to be in the shower in their heads.
Just a convenient spot to
place,
start
I've
looping.
just got it, guys. So the mimics are moving time, right? And they just move her back as well. So they want to go back as far as they can so that they have the most time to reinitiate the fight.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm getting it. I'm getting
For
it.
their benefit, ultimately,
Yeah.
and these two are just caught up in it.
And I don't think the mimics are... I don't think at first the mimics are aware when someone enters the loop. They only clock on later when the
When
headaches
they
start getting
start
stronger.
Yeah. So he's actually dying, but then it's with her loop that he goes back into bed.
No, that's with his loop.
That's
That's
his.
yeah.
Oh,
So she's not reliving his loop. The day is the...
She's starting again.
She's starting fresh
Without the
every time. Yeah.
Like
everyone
It
else.
starts again.
oh wow. It's great. I liked it. I'm gonna say it. It was good.
So we'll I guess start with, say, Gary, did you have a favorite part in the story, either visually or story-wise? I mean, the art itself was amazing, but does anything in particular?
Put me on the spot with that one. I mean, there's a few really super detailed spreads in manga where they're on the battlefield, where KG in particular is fighting the mimics, and it just goes into this really super detailed kind of art style, and those it took me a while to just process it all and take it all in. I really loved those parts of it. And that's what I love about manga, because it's they can fit, they can choose to scale down to less detail to kind of get the story flowing, but then you get these amazing kind of spreads that they add in that, really just show you so much detail. And the fact that there's no color as well, it's it's its own unique form of art kind of thing, So
I just feel like that every every so often just like admiring a page or a spread just visually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How about you, Lara?
Oh, I absolutely agree with you. Like even just flicking through the book now, there's a shot of when they're doing push-ups and they've drawn every single rivet in the shoe. You know, the base of the sole of the shoe, all the little bits. Like, come on, guys, just
I know.
yeah, come on. It's just amazing. And as for favourite parts, I'm really impressed with the whole book. That is one of those things where I thought it was going to be something. I thought it was going to be, I don't know, like a mecha shonen kind of hoo-ha. But I actually thought it was really interesting. It's quite clever.
There was less hoo-ha than you were expecting.
Yeah,
saying.
and I liked how, because there were a little bit, so I did think that there were some of these little sprinklings of tropes, you know, how essentially she's an underage, very like slight girl and she has all this power. And then the other two female characters, the chef, which is this like boobalicious. Why?
Yeah.
And then, but the other thing that kind of annoyed me, I think the only negative I can think of is the key mechanic. So Rita's mechanic. She's also kind of like a bumbling geek. I would have loved it if she was more of a stronger character, you know, and because they paint her as like, oh, I wouldn't have thought she was such a brilliant mind because she's bumbling. And I'm over it. It would have been nice if that was a little bit more thought through, kind of, you know, she had a character as well, because that's a really important character to the entire story. She's like the unifying point of Rita and
the two stories.
Kaji as well. So that's one thing. But I thought it was great. Thank you for suggesting it.
Tazziii, how about yourself? Anything that stood out?
There's so many little moments in this book that are just like so well done, either written well or drawn well. It's really hard to pick something because every time I think of something else comes to mind.
Do you know what I really like and really give some credit to as well, the artwork wise, how there are some mecha or some fighting mangas where you can't really keep track. And I think Attack on Titan is really bad for this. The manga kind of hurts to read.
Wow.
Well, I sometimes think that it's too much action going on in the panels. There's too many movement lines, too many kind of explosions. This had explosions and action lines all over the place, but I think it's to the credit of just paneling it out and using black and white makes it easy to read rather than difficult visually.
And they have a lot of like blank spaces to help you kind of visually follow it a bit better, I suppose, because I don't read much manga, but one of the things I find when I've tried to read some manga is like I look at it and I'm trying to follow it and I can't because there's so much going on that my brain's just like
Yeah, sure.
But yeah, there's just I think it's I was going to choose a favorite moment, but I can't. I don't know. We'll come back to me another episode.
Yeah, no, we'll let that sit. Wait, did you have another moment, Gary?
Yeah, so the moment where Rita kind of forces Keiji to fight because she knows that, you know, only one of them can survive. Like, reading that bit for the first time was like, wow, I can't believe this is happening, because, like, you can feel how thin the pages are getting. So, like, you know that you're, you know that you're right near the end. So you know that one of them is probably going to die. So
yeah,
I
think that was
intense.
a moment for me. Yeah, I didn't see that coming. So I was like, wait, what is she doing? Or what is happening right now? So yeah, I think that was a moment that sort of genuinely took me by surprise. But I mean, speaking of Rita, I felt that there was, again, so many things I liked and appreciated in the story, but I really liked just the addition of a complete sort of backstory for Rita, because for me that just kind of leveled up the story. And when you have the moment where they both, sort of Keiji kind of knows, and Rita realizes what he's been going through, and they just like connect on that. That was made sort of all the better for seeing where Rita had come from. And then also, I already mentioned it, but the whole idea of the panels that kind of looked at the small details like the coffee. I just felt like from a pacing, it was good to like balance all the heavy action with just we're going to talk about coffee for a bit and appreciate the small things and take a moment until we get attacked by more mimics. So yeah, that was a nice balance. But yeah, so I think we're kind of all in agreement that this is a really good story that you should read if you have not read, and it's worth rereading if you've already read it. But then also still a shout out to Edge of Tomorrow, which is still a great film and probably the best video game film that you don't know about, or that you do because the bar is kind of low. But anyway, that's another discussion. Actually, that's a discussion for my EGX talk next month, so I'm not going to go into too much detail on that rant. But yeah, if you've read the manga, watched the film, either, both, let us know what you think. You can send your feedback on this episode's story discussion, feedback@mayamada.com. And you're also welcome to chuck your comments at us on social media. So as we get to the end of this show, I'm just going to pull out a story tip that came to mind as I was reading and considering this story.